and of course we saw on Monday, we saw Daniel Andrews and Mark Mcgowan
Oh my God.
appointed the Order of Australia, which is the top award, as companions, the highest award in the order. Dan Andrews being dubbed Lord of Lockdowns on 2GB. I just like, I can't wait for his statue to go up. I can't wait to see that statue to go up. You know, I'm not.
Why,
I'm not
for pigeons to sit and poo on?
No, look, I'm not.
They'll need 24-hour security around the statue.
Oh, my
Look,
God.
I think
I'll put it this way: if 60 to 70% of this country oppose the voice, yet we see a lot of these Captain Cook statues being cut down, what would the Victorians do? I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm genuinely not. I don't agree in the destruction of public property. I really don't. Dan Andrews is now a part of Australia's history. But I can't wait to see what happens, because it's shocking what they got away with. Like, you know, what's the worst part about this? You know, the actual who have we got here? The Australian Human Rights Commission have basically they've asked the public for how you were affected by the COVID measures, specifically the lockdown. Topher mentioned before the show. What did you say? 2 years too late.
Well, 4 years too late. We knew that there were human rights abuses happening by this time of the year in 2020, and that's when they should have been speaking up. What really, really gets me is they're saying, please write a submission, no attachments, no other reference material. I can't send them a link to Battleground Melbourne, for example, which might be a good place for them to start. 1,000 word limit. And what they're trying to do is develop a new framework for human rights during emergencies and disasters. And I'm sitting there going, I thought you were the framework. I thought the reason you existed was that so that when there was some exceptional circumstance, which is when human rights are going to be violated, they were going to step up to the plate and be the one to defend our human rights. They are literally now saying, tell us your stories that we've been silent on for 4 years so we can create the thing to replace us and do the job that the rest of us thought they were supposed to do.
Maybe they should be using AI. Might do a better job.
So if you make a good point, we saw gross violations of human rights in this country. Right? We saw, and I think there's a thing called the International Declaration of Bioethics and Human Rights. I think it's clause 6.1 or 7, I can't remember exactly. And it basically says that you cannot force someone to undergo a medical intervention with threats of discrimination and prejudice. And that, if you do that, that is a clear breach of that regulation. Right? I tried to bring that up in Parliament and couldn't get it anywhere. We had human rights commissioners being paid $400,000 and $500,000 a year that they saw these gross violations of human rights. They sat back and they saw Australians being shot with rubber bullets in the back as they fled through a public park. And these people said nothing. They are a disgrace. They don't deserve the position that they've got. And now to come up with this thing, I send us in your submission after it's all been done.
Disgraceful.
It is absolutely
disgraceful.
Absolutely outrageous.
Very few things make me angry, but that was one of them. Can I touch on the Mark Mcgowan and Daniel Andrews award here for a moment? Lady Liberty, Kate Fantanel, friend of the show, friend of freedom in Australia, she put up a wonderful meme where she simply had the, oh, here we go, you've got it, fantastic.
I got you, Topher. I got you.
Now I can't claim credit for this. This was Lady Liberty Oz. You can see her tag there. I think she's spot on. I can't argue with this at all.
I think you guys have only talked about Daniel Andrews and kind of skipped over Mark McGowan. I think he deserves a bit of a mention. I remember watching Mark McGowan's ad of promoting get vaccinated. I don't know if anybody can look that up. He had a lovely Aboriginal lady translating, and you've forgotten.
Yes, so bad.
It was, well, I play that even now to my friends, and I get a giggle. So this lovely lady was translating from English to English, and yet she got paid to translate. Go get what did it? I can't remember what she called it.
It was like a pidgin English sort of thing.
It was a train wreck,
and the world laughed, and yet this man just got the order from the king. And by the way, Skerritt got a mention as well, in case anyone is wondering. Yes. John Skerritt also got an award from the king.
I'm so happy for him.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Me too.
Yeah. Just Joel on this. No, please. This is wrong in so many respects. Just look at firstly the merits of the award, right? If you line up all the states, which state had the most number of COVID deaths? Victoria. Which state had the most number of COVID deaths per head of population? Victoria. Right? Then look at the debt. Which state has run up the most debt? Victoria. Right? He has failed in every aspect. You can't say he saved us, he kept us all safe. When you had the worst record of any state in the country, right? He failed. Then you go through things like the red shirt rorts. Then remember what was the one, the hotel quarantine scandal?
Hotel quarantine.
The bike rider he ran over.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
Blamed his wife, though.
So what you've got, firstly, on the merits, he shouldn't deserve it. Then you've got the politicisation of it, right? Now, I think Berejiklian did a shocking job and not far behind Andrews, right? But why would you give two Labor premiers this award, right? And not give it to Berejiklian, right? No, not that I'm saying she should get it, right?
Great question.
But against politicised. Now, what it has actually done, this has actually destroyed the credibility of the Companion of Australia Award. It's destroyed the credibility of these awards. So everyone in the past that won one of these awards is tarnished, and everyone going forward is also tarnished by it. Daniel Andrews, if he had any decency whatsoever, and McGowan, everything, they should hand these things back.
I've got to disagree on one point only. He failed in everything except for one thing. He did succeed with one thing, and I'm sure everyone will agree. He's the only person I know who can fall down a step that's about yay big and end up in hospital.
It's quite an astonishing achievement. Can I just actually go into bat for Mark Mcgowan here? Because I actually think he does deserve an award, because he provided the entire world with a test case, a sample, to see what happens when you inject a population with
no
mRNA
COVID
vaccines
Yeah.
prior to COVID being introduced. And that data set is the smoking gun. If you don't know what we're talking about, look up Dystopian DU, look up her Substack, read her research onto this. It is an absolute smoking gun for the adverse event harm being done.
Yep.
So Mark Mcgowan has done us a favour.
You're right. Western
that is
Australian
a
hospitals
very
were packed,
important point that you
absolutely
make.
packed.
Because you had a population that hadn't been affected by COVID, right? So when the injections were rolled out, right, you couldn't see all these extra illnesses all because of COVID. We saw the injections rolled out, and we saw the hospitalisations go through the roof in Western Australia. He said, "You're right. That is the smoking gun. That the hospitalisations, the excess deaths are because of the vaccines, not because of."
And I presented that data to Allegra Spender. Which
How did
was
that
quite
go?
fascinating. Oh, well.
Did she understand it? It would have
Well, I got asked, well, Natalie, what is it that you want me to do? And I thought, I don't know. Well, you are a parliamentarian. How about you go in there and actually go to bat for people in your electorate that perhaps could be injured? How about that? But no.
Wasn't it was it Karen Phelps, her partner, or she?
Both of
got
them were
vaccine
injured. Both
Both
are
of them.
vaccine injured.
It was interesting. Karen Phelps was one of my constituents in the Cedar Hughes, and we know she was very badly injured, and so was a partner was catastrophically injured in late 2021.
Yeah.
Okay. During 2022, she was running around supporting all the Teal candidates in my electorate, right? And the Teal candidates were all 100% for the vaccine mandates, and she said nothing. She was out there criticising me, attacking me. What did I know? I was stupid, sort of thing, right? Yeah. She was the genius, and all the Teals were right. These vaccines should be mandated, and she was saying that.
It was worse than nothing.
She was saying that when she knew that she'd been harmed and a partner had been harmed.
It was worse than nothing because she went on national television and promoted the vaccine for children. She was the one that was promoting it for children post being injured. And her wife was very, very badly injured. You're completely right. So if you know that in your household, both yourself and your wife are injured from this vaccine and you go out there and promote it for children, I'm sorry.
Well,
what does that make
she
you?
She can't say she didn't know. That's going to be the defence of a lot of these people.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
No,
I didn't
she
know.
knew.
She doesn't have that defence.
She
and
knew.
there has to eventually, and unfortunately it won't come soon enough, but there has to come a point where criminal charges are being brought against some people. I'm not saying necessarily her in particular, but we have to get to a point, same as we need to see Julie Inman-Grant thrown out of the job and the person who gave it to her thrown out of their job. We need to see actual consequences for these people. This, in my opinion, reaches at a minimum to criminal negligence. And may, in some cases, actually reach to the level of malice.
When I first saw the AstraZeneca story come out about how the jab was completely botched, and obviously Craig was talking about it. By that point, he was completely deplatformed. Sure. And, obviously we had Matt Canavan and a few others. And then we see, these other studies come out. A lot of people in our community had mixed reactions. A lot of them were like, obviously, understandably, I told you so, especially with people like Allegra Spender and others, and obviously Craig, you've been attacked physically for your views and egged, and you too, Topher, are no longer in Victoria. My natural inclination when I saw these stories, I haven't commented on it since, but it was probably summarize it with my reaction when one of my health practitioners, I debated with him throughout the pandemic, my optometrist. I said, he was basically said, you were right about the jab. Can I just finish this point?
Sure, yeah.
He was just like, my wife got vaccine injured, and I just couldn't help but say, I'm sorry, man. If I had done my job better, if I was more articulate, if I actually, but I can honestly say, and I'm sure you guys can say, you tried everything.
You did. I know that the guilt is always there because I have a vaccine-injured mother and incredibly injured. But with the same time, you go to a neurologist who sits across from you and tells you, well, oh my God, isn't your mother lucky? What would have happened had she not had the vaccine? And this is where you think, well, I've got to control my anger because if I don't control my anger, this woman would probably be on the floor. But that was the last time we saw the neurologist. But yeah, you do feel like, could I have done more? No, none of us could have.
Yeah.
None of us could have.
You talk about the reckless criminality of this. I can remember the dates. It was the end of March 2021 when there was data coming through from Europe, and we had one European country after the other suspending the AstraZeneca vaccines because there were concerns about the blood clotting. Right. That time, I remember I went on, I think it was Koch's program on Channel 7, and Matt Canavan made some other comments. Said, look, we must err on the side of caution. You must be applying the precautionary principle. This was at a time when Australia did have huge rates of COVID. We didn't have people hundreds of people dying every day in hospitals like other countries did. We had the chance to take the foot off the pedal. Let's see what's happening in Europe. If there's a concern, there's a risk, you've got to pull back. And no. I remember that Paul Kelly, he went on TV and he said, no, there's no evidence whatsoever and that there's blood clots. And And I don't believe there's, I personally believe there's any chance of this, right? 2 weeks later, the evidence became absolutely overwhelming. And they then said, we're going to pull it for under 50s. And in that window that there was, several people in Australia under 50 got injected and died. So because we didn't pull the vaccines like they did in most European countries for under 50-year-old or under 60 people, right? Because they procrastinated and sat on their hands and said, no, we're just going to keep it. Australians died.
Yeah.
And we know after, I read a story yesterday, which I couldn't believe, even after that, and that ATAGI group came out with, we don't, it's not recommended for the under 50s. Right? They didn't suspend it like they did in other countries. They just said it's not recommended. And we had politicians in this country, like Dan Andrews, we know Health Hazard was involved, and Berejiklian were all still pushing AstraZeneca for everyone after that. Yeah. And we know, there was a story the other day, a beautiful 33-year-old girl took the AstraZeneca, I think it was in July, immediately was sick, went straight to hospital, was put in a coma and was dead within, I think, about 10 or 11 days afterwards. She should have never have been injected with that. Our bureaucrats failed to protect the population. And they ignored what is it's one thing you say you don't know, but they ignored the evidence. The evidence was crystal clear and the evidence was there, and yet they closed their eyes because it was all about getting everyone vaccinated.
And they're still ignoring the evidence. To this day, they're ignoring the evidence because when you have a new vaccine technology with no long-term data, you cannot mandate something that has no long-term data.
Yeah.
It is one of those things where it's so evident to anyone who has done science that it's wrong on every level. And yet we had ATAGI was giving exemptions, very rare exemptions. You were very, very, very lucky to have ever gotten an exemption. And that was only if you had COVID. It started with 6 months. Then they thought, no, we don't do 6 months. We'll do 4 months, then 3 months. And I think it got down to about 6 weeks, if I remember correctly. Like, how does that work? If somebody has had chickenpox, you don't go out in 6 weeks and get a chickenpox vaccine. So how is this any different? There's just no scientific data. There's no scientific thought processes.
Can I come back to the comments around, loved ones who went ahead and did it anyway? And there is that sort of survivor's guilt, I guess, that comes with that. I had to work through this because it's touched my family as well and my friendship group. And I came to an epiphany, and it's harsh, but I think it's fair. You are not the idiot whisperer. You know how there are horse whisperers? They can go up to a wild horse and whisper in their ear and just transform them, right? And all of a sudden their behavior changes and all of a sudden they become, wonderful animals. You are not the idiot whisperer.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's an idiot, it actually doesn't matter what you say and what you whisper into their ear. Unfortunately, sometimes the idiot just has to go and be an idiot and, F around and find out. And they did.
You know that scene in Schindler's List? Have you seen Schindler's List? At the very end when he's like, it's clear that the Germans are about to surrender and the Russians are closing in and all the Jews are around the car and they're saying goodbye to Schindler, and Schindler's like, this pen, this is another person, or this pin, it's gold, that's 3 more people. That's the emotional feeling point I know that we all have, because I can't say that I'm innocent with regards to how I went about things. There were times my memes went too far. There were times that it's a moment for me to it's like a checkpoint. I'm sorry, guys, that I wasn't more effective during those years. There were times I did go too far and I could have been more articulate. There were times I did leave myself open to fact checks on ivermectin where I could have been better. I now challenge those that were actually in power and getting rid of Craig in the pre-selection process in the Liberal Party, the members like Nick Coatsworth. Where is the Royal Commission? Where is, we've led the world with regards to doing excess death inquiry, thanks to Senator Babbitt. Where is the Royal Commission with regards to all this? That's what I get.
Who's going to lead the Royal Commission is my question. I mean, who are they going to appoint? Are they going to get Jane Holton to lead the Royal Commission? I mean, seriously, we need somebody who actually knows what they're doing, who's lived through this. I agree with you, though. We do need a Royal Commission, without a doubt, because we all have remorse and guilt and all the rest of it. The difference is that Schindler did not quite do that, because if you read Schindler's Ark, which was the original book, none of that happened. It was a Hollywoodized version.
Of course.
But
neither did the Tarkin story.
No.
By the way. but sorry, can I just say one thing on the vaccine? I haven't told anyone this yet, but I've noticed from talking to people, we all have these stories in our family. It affected different people's. There was a pattern that developed. There were a number of men, young men, particularly from the age of, let's say, 20 to 40. They did get the jab, both jabs at different times, because it was mandated in industry. Me not getting the jab was a life-changing decision. And if my dad was around battling cancer, it would have actually finished him off. Not like the lockdowns were what killed him, because obviously, he couldn't get cancer treatment. But I know for a certainty the jab would have finished him off because of what it did to the younger men. The ones that got the AstraZeneca jab, one of them told me on the way back from the first jab, I was going blind while I was driving back. That's what he told me. Wow. And he was 21. The other one was he got the Pfizer jab, and now he got, as a result, he was hospitalized, pericarditis, myocarditis. There are some ethnicities as well. I'm not trying to say, it disproportionately affected the poor or the black people. That's not what I'm trying to say. But there are genetic nuances which I saw, and the Jammal, there's something about in my DNA, it would have been lethal to me. And I'm really, really glad I didn't get it. And I hope that you guys didn't come across that too much, those that are listening, but sorry.
I don't want to labour this point too much, but I know there's going to be a lot of people watching this that are going to resonate a bit with what you've expressed about that regret, that sense of could have done more, that sense of, I didn't get everything right. I want to push back in no uncertain terms against that mentality. And my reference point, you've used Schindler's List. Let me use Lord of the Rings.
Love it.
Not the movies, the books.
Okay, right.
Read the books. One of the things that's actually brilliant about Tolkien's writing, now he of course was a World War I survivor, and for me the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy, the story is actually about Gollum. That's actually what it's about. And I won't go into that particular line, but essentially what it's about is the effect of the ring, the effect that it has on these different people. We see what it does to Boromir. It turns him and he dies, and he sort of necessarily dies. It turns Saruman and he desires that power. It turns Gollum, and Gollum just wants this possession. And it's turning Frodo, and it's trying to turn the entire Fellowship. And actually, when these 4 hobbits get back to Hobbiton, they have to fight against Sharky and so forth. There's a whole other story that happens there in the books. And then we get to the lingering effects of the ring and the burden that these hobbits carried. And in the end, Bilbo and Frodo both go across to the Undying Lands to be free of the wounds that they just can't heal from. And the others are all affected, each in their own sort of devastating ways. And there comes a point where you have to realize that the damage that you're carrying, which I'm carrying an enormous amount as well, is actually, these are the scars of war, and they should be worn with pride. And you shouldn't be sitting there going, oh, well, I could have got more scars. right? Oh, if I'd have just tried a bit harder, they would have kicked me in the head even more times, right? You actually have to get to the point where, a little bit like Henry V, the feast of Crispin St. Crispian, you know, I will bear these scars and say these wounds I bear on Crispian's day. I mean, we have to actually emotionally get to the point where we can be out there and say, you're damn right, I'm damaged goods. I am. I'm really having to work through a lot out of those years. Professional counselling, the whole lot. But I wear those wounds with pride, because they speak to who I was during that time that very few other people had the courage to be. And you were one of those very few other people. So can I just encourage you, stop writing yourself, stop telling yourself you didn't do enough. Whatever wounds you're carrying, I have found therapy in being quite open and public about them and saying, I bear these wounds with pride.
That was beautifully put, Topher.
I'm going to move to the next topic because we're getting on way too well with regards to, I love the, if you want to bring Lord of the Rings up again, please do. Immigration.